everyone! So today we are going to be doing a lesson on violence prevention. The violence in particular that we're going to be focusing on today is going to be bullying. We will be reading a book here shortly, but before we do that, let's just brainstorm some ideas or characteristics that we think bullies have. What comes to mind when you think of bullying? Ian? Okay, they're mean. What else? Haley? Okay, they might steal. What would they steal? Lunch money? Good. Okay. What else? Danny? Okay, they might push and shove. Anything else that comes to mind? Allison? They might make people feel bad. Anything else? Jay? Okay, they're troublemakers. Okay, so I think we have a pretty good list here now. What I'm going to do is set this aside and we're going to read a story and just kind of refer back to this throughout the story. Okay, this story is called Mr. Lincoln's Wits by Patricia Polacco. Mr. Lincoln was the coolest principal in the whole world, or so his students thought. He had the coolest clothes, had the coolest smile, and did the coolest things. He had tea parties with Mrs. West's kindergarten every spring. He took Mr. Bliss's sixth graders on nature walks. He set up a telescope next to the pond and back on school nights and invited kids and their families to come look at the stars. And in the winter, he was Santa for the Christmas play. Mr. Lincoln was just plain cool. Absolutely everybody thought so, except for Eugene Easterhaus. Mean Gene is what everyone liked to call him. Mean Gene sassed the teachers and beat up on most of the other kids on the playground. He was no student at all. He drove Mrs. Dunkel crazy in English, and Mrs. Chew wanted to drop him for art. And he was a bully. He always seemed angry, picking on kids and calling them names. He's not a bad boy, really, Mr. Lincoln said, only troubled. To just about everyone in school, though, Eugene was trouble, spelled with a capital T. Then one day, he leered at a first grader. "What are you looking at, scumball?" he said, and he pushed her down and wrenched her backpack away. "I'm going to tell Mr. Lincoln," she announced. "Go ahead, you little brat. I ain't afraid of that." Then he stopped. Mr. Lincoln was standing right there. The bell rang and Eugene scurried away. Now Eugene was in Mr. Lincoln's thoughts more than ever. He knew he had to find a way to reach him. Then one day, as Mr. Lincoln was helping the fifth grade plant a tree in the beautiful new atrium, he noticed that Eugene was looking up in the branches at one of the other trees. There sat a bright red cardinal. 2 other days, Mr. Lincoln had seen Eugene standing at the atrium window, watching birds on trees. Mr. Lincoln wondered, was it possible that... It wasn't a day later when Mr. Lincoln called Eugene into his office. Eugene slumped into his chair. Mr. Lincoln took a beautiful book out of his desk drawer. A book in blazing color, and it's all about birds. He turned to one page and studied the illustration. "I've got these little birds all over my tree, and I don't know what they are." Eugene got out of his chair and walked closer. "Those are red-capped nuthatches. Where to see them at this time of the year?" "You seem to know your birds," Mr. Lincoln said with a warm smile. "I do. When I lived on my grandpa's farm, he had tons of birds around. Chickens, meadowlarkers. We raised carrier pigeons together." "You've got quite a grandpa," Mr. Lincoln said, but Eugene just turned his back on Mr. Lincoln and left the room. A week had gone by when Eugene ran into Mr. Lincoln by the atrium, looking glum. I have a problem, Mr. Lincoln said. So? The atrium was supposed to be full of birds, but they're just not coming, the principal looked into the empty atrium. Wrong plants in there to make them want to stay. Not the right food either, Eugene started to walk away. Your grandpa teach you that? Eugene turned and looked at Mr. Lincoln for the first time. Maybe. Do you suppose you could help us attract birds here to our atrium, Eugene? Mr. Lincoln handed him a book. And perhaps this would help. Eugene seemed stunned at first. Then he took the beautiful book on birds in his hands, wrapped it in his arms, and bolted down the hall. As the days passed, Eugene never seemed to be without his book. His English teacher let Eugene read passages from the book in class. I'm so pleased to see him reading, Mrs. Dunkel explained. And when he didn't have his nose in that book, he was almost constantly at the atrium. He and Mr. Lincoln made a list of plants and shrubs to buy and types of grain and seeds to feed the birds. They even built 3 feeders together. That's when it started to happen. The birds began to come. So many different kind of birds that the whole school stood from time to time just to watch them wander around in the atrium. Eugene seemed genuinely happy. He didn't even tease other kids anymore. Then one day, Mrs. Chew burst into Mr. Lincoln's office. There are 2 mallards nesting in the atrium. Mr. Lincoln rushed to the hall, and sure enough, there in the atrium was a male and a female mallard. And there was their nest near the southeastern corner of the atrium. Mr. Lincoln saw Eugene on the other side of the atrium, giving him a thumbs up. I was hoping that might be a mating pair, Eugene said one day as he and Mr. Lincoln looked at the 5 perfect eggs in the nest. Just one problem. The ducklings will need to be near water. They'll need to get They'll need to get to the pond outside. They can't fly at the top like their parents. You'll think of something, Eugene. I know you will, Mr. Lincoln said, and he put his hand on Eugene's shoulder. It was nice that Mean Gene wasn't mean anymore. It was only 3 days later that there was a commotion in the hall. Mrs. Bettling rushed into Mr. Lincoln's office with Eugene in a tow. Mr. Lincoln looked at Eugene in disbelief. What happened? I'll let Eugene tell you, Mrs. Bettling trumpeted. But Eugene said nothing. He just sat looking hateful and defiant. Trouble in the lunch line, she went on. He singled out 2 of our students from Mexico. He called them brown-skinned toads and other unacceptable names. I'll take care of this, Mr. Lincoln said quietly. Mr. Lincoln sat down in front of the boy. Eugene, my skin is brown too. Eugene just glared at Mr. Lincoln. This I know, Eugene. Someone who loves birds the way you do couldn't possibly have that kind of hate in his heart. Then Eugene began to cry. My old man got really mad when I got home late from helping you, he sobbed. He said you're not our kind. Our kind, Mr. Lincoln murmured. He led Eugene to the window of the atrium. It was alive with songs of the birds. I see sparrows, jays, cardinals, nuthatches, and mallards. Don't all those beautiful types of colors make this beautiful place to be? For all of them? Eugene nodded. Well, God made all of them, all kinds, just like he made all of us, Eugene. Fact is, all of you children here with all your cool differences are my little birds. Yes, my little birds. And that should be your answer as to what is right and wrong and what your father said, Mr. Lincoln said quietly. My old man calls you real bad names, Mr. Lincoln. He's got an ugly name for just about everybody that's different from us. Mr. Lincoln didn't talk for the longest time. Eugene, sometimes people get trapped in their own thinkings, almost as surely as those ducklings will be trapped in the atrium, Mr. Lincoln said thoughtfully. My grandpa just wasn't like that. Mr. Lincoln put his arm around the boy's shoulder. I'd like to meet that grandpa. But Eugene, you have to promise me. Even with bad things that happen at home, here at school you need to treat all of my little birds with kindness and respect. No more teasing, name calling. Please promise me. Eugene promised. As the days passed, the mallard parents flew out of the atrium, landing on the pond just behind the school. They were leaving their babies for longer and longer periods of time. Eugene and Mr. Lincoln knew that the time was approaching when they needed to go back to the ducklings out of the atrium and into the pond. They had a plan. When the big day arrived, classes were asked to stay in their rooms. Then Eugene and Mr. Lincoln opened the door to the atrium and stepped in. They had both practiced to saying, ding, ding, like the mallard parents. Now they would talk to the ducklings, coaxing them to follow. The father mallard waddled up to the door of the atrium and peered down the hall. At the end of the hall, the father mallard could see the lawn and the pond. The mother came out first, then one by one her babies followed. Eugene walked down the hall, calling to them over and over, and the family waddled behind him. Then all at once the mother and father took the lead, and the ducklings scurried after them. At the outside door they stopped for a moment. Then the mother and father jumped on the door and coaxed each other after the ducklings followed. Mr. Lincoln and Eugene both stood and watched as the ducklings raced down the hillside and plopped into the pond with their parents. Now I know where the expression, like a duck takes to water, comes from, Mr. Lincoln laughed. He couldn't believe how well the babies swam. Parents had gathered at the top of the hill. They had been invited to watch from afar. Then Eugene heard a voice from behind them call out his name. Eugene, boy, over here! It was his grandfather. The boy raced up the hill. Mr. Lincoln joined them both. This is my grandpa, Eugene sang out. I know, Mr. Lincoln said. Eugene turned towards him. Had Mr. Lincoln had something to do with this miracle? With his grandpa being here? Now the old man shook Mr. Lincoln's hand heartedly. I would sure like to stay with you again, Grandpa, Eugene said as he and his grandfather walked up the hill together. The old man put his arm around the boy's shoulder. We'll see, son. We'll sure see, he said. Later, Eugene and Mr. Lincoln walked down by the pond together. Eugene needed to say something to Mr. Lincoln. You showed those ducklings the way out, Eugene, Mr. Lincoln said. Hey, you showed me the way out, Mr. Lincoln, Eugene smiled. Then he stopped and looked into the principal's eyes. I'll make you proud of me, Mr. Lincoln, I promise. Eugene was true to his promise. He became a fourth grade teacher and called his students my little birds. So, love this book. I think it was a great story to touch on our topic. So, what I'm going to do is we're going to have a little discussion just about the story, kind of refreshing our brains here. One question I have for you guys is, how did the students react when Eugene was a bully? Do you think they were happy? Were they sad? Actually, we can write this down really fast here. Okay. How did they react? Yeah. Right, they were sad. So they were sad and upset that someone was calling them mean names when they didn't really feel like they deserved to be called those names. He was picking on them in a very, he wasn't being very nice. Okay, great. So let's talk about a couple ways that Eugene changed. What did he start with? Like, he said one of the other characteristics, he was mean. Okay. So how did he change? Okay, he went to understanding. That's good. Okay. Anything else other than mean? Okay, he went from a troublemaker to taking care of the birds. Okay, good. So the third question here, how about at the end of the story, how did the students feel about Eugene? Were they still mad and angry with him? Yeah, Michelle? No, they were understanding with him too. They were happy with his progress. You know, he started out being very mean to them, but in the end, even after all that, they were still understanding with him. And they weren't mean back to him. Okay, our last and final question before we move on to the next thing is, now, Mr. Lincoln said he accepts every one of his students. Now, what do you think are some things that we could do to make sure that we accept others? Yeah. Okay, we could be their friends. If we saw them being bullied, we'd stand up for them. So stand up if someone is being bullied. Good. Anything else? How about accepting differences? I think that's a good one, right? I think that if someone has brown hair and someone has blonde hair, that doesn't make them any different of a person just because of their hair color. So how about accepting differences? Okay, great. That was awesome, guys. Great work. Now, we are going to, I printed out a sheet of paper for you guys. Now, this is just a quick activity that we're going to do in class about how Eugene was when he was a bully and how he was after he was a bully and how he felt afterwards. Oops. So we'll hand these out. And I'm going to brainstorm on here as well. We can just talk about this in a couple of the other questions, but we're going to go a little bit more in depth. Okay. So Eugene then. At the beginning of the story, Eugene was mean, disrespectful. And he really seemed like he hated school, right? So we're going to write that. So, did he have a lot of friends? I don't think so. So, didn't have a lot of friends. Definitely a troublemaker. That one art teacher didn't even want him in his class. Okay, let's see. Eugene then. Do you think that we need to add anything else? Skylar? Okay, so we can say, yeah, no, we can write that he was a bully. He was bullying other students. It's broad, but yeah. Okay, so then Eugene now. So let's take mean and disrespectful. How did he change by the end of the book? He was nice and respectful to teachers, right? Does he hate school? No, he likes school now. And he loved the birds. So we're going to add that. Do you think he has more friends now that he's nice to people? That's a good way to get new friends, right? If you're actually nice to people. So making more friends. Now, is he still a troublemaker? No, he's not a troublemaker anymore. He actually helped those birds. So quite the opposite. So he's being responsible and helpful. And lastly, is he bullying students anymore? No, right. Even at the end of the story, he said that he didn't pick on any kids anymore because he realized from Mr. Lincoln that everyone is different in their own unique way. So not a bully anymore. I'm going to write that all caps. Okay. Ooh. Great. So now we've got that. We've noticed that kind of from Eugene, who was a bully, and all his characteristics that he had throughout the story. And then we started to realize that, okay, maybe being a bully is not the right thing to do. And Mr. Lincoln kind of helped him with that. And then you saw all the things that he now has characteristic-wise. So, the last part of the story, we talked about this a little bit in our short discussion after the story. Mr. Lincoln had said that everyone has their own unique qualities and that we should accept everyone. Now, can we please just list a few qualities that you guys think are unique? What would be some things that somebody could have that doesn't necessarily mean that they're any different from anyone else? Yeah. Okay, glasses. Yeah, exactly. Now, that's a good one because there's much... People tend to bully students with glasses, like call them four eyes and make fun of them because they need them to see, but no, they're unique. You know, there's everyone, I mean, you need to see, so glasses make people no different than anyone else. What are some other things? Okay, yeah, like we said before, brown hair, your hair color. Well, actually, we'll write hair color. Eye color. Good. Anything else? Yeah. Talents is a good one. Now that could be, what are some talents that we could? Singing. Yeah. Okay, sports. So they're good in sports. Anything else? We could do dancing. Okay. What about hobbies? I mean, a lot of people have hobbies. What if I had a hobby of reading? A lot of people like to pick on people who read. Call them nerds. Are they really nerds? Not at all. Reading is a really good one. You guys all have to read for class anyway, so I don't know why anyone would bully anyone about reading. Reading, they could like hiking. They could like extracurricular, they could like clubs, sports clubs, spelling bee, Spanish club. Now, physical appearance. I feel like that kind of goes with hair color and eye color, but I feel like that's pretty unique. I think everyone is unique in their own way, no matter their eye color, no matter their hair color, no matter their skin color. And I think, like Mr. Lincoln had said, that we need to accept others. We need to know how to communicate with other people and stand up for other people when people are bullying each other because of something that they don't have. Like if I have glasses, I'm not going to bully someone who doesn't have glasses. And I would hope that somebody would stand up, if someone was getting bullied for glasses, someone would stand up and be like, hey, glasses are cool, you know? Everyone needs to, they're just trying to see just like you are. You just don't need glasses. So realizing that everyone is special in their own way, I think could be a great way to prevent violence and prevent bullying. And I think for the class, to have some things around the room to show that we are all unique in our own way would be a great way to do that. So what I have for us to do, I'm going to hand out some construction paper. Different kind of construction paper. You can pick any color you want. Got some crayons and markers. And we are going to make birds. And on these birds, I want you guys to list at least 5 qualities that you guys have that make you unique. Now, the 5 things that I have is I love teaching. I have glasses. I love school. I have brown hair. And I love to craft. Now, these things are very important to me. And some of you guys might not like to craft, and you might not have brown hair or glasses, but that makes us unique. That makes us who we are. And because you guys are my flock of students, and I think that you guys are all unique, we are going to make these. We are going to hang them throughout the classroom as a reference. So if you ever feel like you're not unique, you go up to these and you see that everyone has their own special traits. And you might have something else like someone else. You might love soccer and the other person might love soccer. That's fine. That's okay. Everyone, I mean, it's bound to happen that you're going to have your own set of qualities. But what really is important is that you realize that no matter what, you guys are important. You guys have who you are right now should not be picked on. You should not have to be bullied at school. And if you are bullied at school, you need to realize that you should stand up for people. You should come to people if you see people being bullied. Who to go to? You guys can always come to me if you see it. I think that's important. I think a lot of people get scared that they're going to be bullies if they tell, like a tattletale, but that's not true at all. I think that you guys need to understand that to make the school and make our classroom a good environment for everyone, that we need to make sure bullying is completely prevented. So I thank you guys for your participation. I think you guys all did wonderful. I really hope that you guys could take away the overall message that we need to stand up to people. We need to realize that we are our own people and that we have great qualities, and just do our part in preventing bullying. Thank you guys so much. So if you want to keep working on these, and then come set them or come give them to me, and I'll start hanging them up. Thank you so much.